Okay, well, everything starts with an idea, and it's very difficult to say where an idea comes from. But I'll give you an example. I was with Charlie Borman, great friend of mine, and we've worked together for many years, and we were in Valencia to see a motorcycle race, and he said, over a bottle of red wine, "Russ, what should we do next?" And I took my boarding pass out of my pocket, because we've just got off a flight, only because the back of it was plain white paper. And I looked at this piece of paper, and I thought, well, the most iconic trip that I could think of in the world was London, top left, to Sydney, bottom right. Why don't we do that as an expedition? And because it's on a flight coupon, a boarding pass, let's not take a plane. So I made up this idea of buses and tuk-tuks and canoes and trains and whatever to get across the world. And he loved the idea. I wrote it up, and I thought of the name, By Any Means, and it eventually got commissioned. So I suppose another idea that was born out of, serendipity was I just went to a party one night, bumped into Charlie Borman, and he said, "I'm thinking of going around the world with a good friend of mine on motorbikes." That friend turned out to be Ewan, and we all got together with a great friend of mine, David, and Long Way was born in that moment. We came up with the title between us, so it was a very collaborative affair. And we then sort of pitched the idea, and the rest was history. So an idea can literally come from a moment's inspiration, or it can come to you from a third party. It's difficult then to take that idea and move it forward into reality. And what does that take? It takes a lot of commitment from yourself or the people that you're working with, a lot of understanding of other people's personalities and how they might want to influence this idea. But you also have to think, will this make a good documentary? So these are all things that are starting to buzz through your mind at the beginning of this process. But it's very important to start writing the idea down at the beginning, and then it will start to flesh itself out. So what makes a good idea? I think the first thing is it's an idea that you're passionate about, that you really believe in, or the people that you're working with do, because through that comes this energy of making it happen. We'll talk about that in a minute, which is your sort of pursuit of this idea to really get it over the line. But generally speaking, you should look for an idea that has variety in it, spontaneity, and something that's going to derive enough content for your TV show to make that worth watching. So you may have the idea, you may have the collection of people that you want to work with to develop that idea. But if you haven't got the experience in filming it, you might want to think about teaming up with a production company or people that do already actually make that type of show. Because if you take an idea to a broadcaster that you haven't got experience with, they probably won't listen to you for very long because they know that you can't deliver it. So if you haven't got the experience, you need to team up with other people that do. The other thing that I'm a firm believer in is start filming straight away. Because if you can get those moments where an idea was first thought of, you may not use it in the edit, but if you do capture it and where that journey started, it's actually quite exciting to watch. People are excited about those early stages of problem solving and creating the idea and where should we go. So my recommendation is always film right at the very beginning, even if it's just on your phone. It's also quite helpful to work with a partner. Sometimes it's easier to do it yourself if you're very, very convinced about what you're doing. But if you share the load with somebody else that brings things to the party, sometimes that makes life easier and it gives you something somebody to discuss the idea with. As an example, I work with a great friend of mine, David Alexanin, on the Long Way series. We've known each other for 30 years. And when we were discussing the idea, it was just fun to have that sounding board of somebody that has a different skill sets to me, but we were able to solve problems together. And that could work. But finding that person is down to you as to whether or not you actually gel as two personalities, but it's worth thinking about. So once you've got your idea, you then need to think about who's going to sort of present it or be in front of the camera. And it certainly helps to have a celebrity. It's not easy, but sometimes if you can actually get a celebrity involved in your amazing idea, it will certainly help make it easier to sell or get it commissioned. The other thing that's important is the title. For me, it's always best to have 2 or 3 words. Why? Because on the EPG, the electronic program guide, you want to be able to get the whole of your title in that space if you can, and it's just easy for people to get a handle on it. So as an example, Charlie and I one time did the Dakar Rally through North Africa. So I was trying to think of what do I call the expedition, which can also be the name of the TV show. And I just called it Race to Dakar because that's where we were going. And that seemed to work for us. Another example, of course, is Long Way Round. The name itself is repeatable, long way round, long way down, long way up, but it also says what it does on the can. So I would strongly recommend that you stop to think about the title and see if you can come up with something clever. The other thing I think is important when you're coming up with your idea, which sort of refers back to that philosophy I said in the introduction, which is enjoy the planet and do some good at the same time. So I'm a firm believer that if you're going to go off and do an adventure and make your TV show, then try and work with a good cause, whether it's environmental, humanitarian, whatever is important to you. So as an example, we picked UNICEF, and that's been such an important relationship to us. We've made sure that we've put their content in each one of our shows. But for instance, when I was making the show with Prince Harry, with his charity in Lesotho, that was super important. We made a great show, but it also highlighted the good cause and the good work that's going out on the planet. It doesn't have to form the major content of your documentary, but it would be nice to have a part of it where you're giving back. So as I mentioned before, I think it's a good idea to start filming as soon as possible. And we also found that by setting a departure date, it might be a year in advance, but it's also good for you psychologically because it means that you can start preparing for departure rather than just waiting for a yes from the people that come up with the finance. Because if you have an expedition, you need to let people that's where they're going to go, that's when they need to be available, and that's when you need to start sort of booking things in. But it also psychologically puts pressure on you to go, right, I need to sort these other problems out because that's when we're going. You also need to decide within your team who has the final say. And that doesn't mean to say who's the bossiest person. It's just that at some point people will come up with a lot of different ideas and somebody within it has to be able to say, well, look, okay, with all these factors dialed into my head, this is the decision that we need to make. Because if you don't have that person or if you don't have that agreement, sometimes nothing gets agreed and your idea just won't ever happen. So it's good to have these ideas and these philosophies set out at the beginning of your idea before you start trying to pitch it.